you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey, folks, the Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, when Iron Lady sings it there, welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show has been bringing you for nearly 20 years. The Chris Voss Show, thousands of episodes, 1 to 2 new shows a day from the most amazing authors and minds in the world. And as always, we are the oldest living podcast now that is surviving, that still does 1 to 2 new shows a day. That's the caveat. There's a handful that don't, but they're good people. Anyway, guys, help us stay alive, and hopefully we can be the last man standing. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today we're going to be talking to an amazing young man about his books, and we're going to get into some of the details on what he writes and talks about. Robert Maker joins us in the show. The title of his book is called Nutrition and the Brain, and we're going to get into it with him. He is a veteran educator and gymnastics coach with more than 50 years of experience working with children. After earning a dual degree in health and physical education from the University of Houston, he spent decades teaching elementary physical education and coaching gymnastics. His lifelong passion has been helping children develop confidence, strength, and resilience in a safe and supportive environment. In his book, Robert shifts his focus from protecting children from physical injuries to helping families recognize and prevent emotional and psychological harm. Drawing from his decades of experience with children and families, he shares insights designed to raise awareness, encourage meaningful conversations, and empower parents, educators, and caregivers to better support children's well-being. He'll be discussing the inspiration behind the book and the lessons he's learned from a lifetime of working with children. Welcome to the show. Robert, how are you?
Well, I'm doing good.
Awesome sauce. Give us any .coms, websites, wherever on the internet you want people to get to know you better.
Yeah, I've got official Robert Maker, or actually I think it's Robert Maker official website. I haven't opened it up or used it yet. That's what the publisher gave me.
Oh, okay. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your book?
Okay. Basically, I've noticed some disturbing trends over the years. For instance, chapter 1 starts out with my life story. I talk about my 52 years of working with children, and it moves from very simple, normal life. I'm not a PhD or MD or anything like that. But I've just been witnessing a lot of things. And unfortunately, years ago, we didn't have kids with attention deficit disorder. Kids didn't have a hard time listening and following directions. Kids seem to just have less problems with anxiety and stress and that type of thing. And when I started teaching public schools, elementary PE, I noticed a lot of things that just really it shouldn't be happening. We had school teachers, one of them was about 30 years old, and she had what's called a mini stroke. And I didn't think that happened to young people. We had quite a few kids and adults were having seizures. We had autism was, of course, present. And let me see, we had one older teacher, and she wasn't labeled as having autism, but now that we think back of it, she was getting pretty forgetful about a lot of things.
Probably on the spectrum, maybe.
Yeah, not this one, I don't think. But we did have some that were. And so then we had this thing where our school district had gone exemplary, or our school had gone exemplary for the state testing, which is a big honor. And then they had a thing where if we went a fourth time, we were all going to get $3,000 stipend. And that sounds great, but being a PE teacher, I was going to get $50.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that sounded good. And what irritated me more, the first and second grade teachers didn't get anything. And without a good first and second grade and kindergarten basis around, how are the third, fourth, and fifth grade teachers going to have anything really knowledgeable to work with?
Yeah.
same brawn. And so I'm sitting there looking at all this, and I thought, physical education, you get a lot of, we're in the school with these same groups of people that were in pre-med for stuff like that. And so I started looking about ways that I could help improve their academic scores. And I kind of came across some things I had never heard about. The first chapter, or the second chapter in my book, starts talking about New York City public schools. Yeah, New York City public schools, they were at the 43 percentile as far as nationwide testing goes. And then it dropped down to 39%. And they hired this guy named Dr. Ben Feingold, who still has the Feingold Association and is still very active. And if you have a child with problems, you could call them and get them to help you out. But anyway, the New York City public schools, they hired this guy, and he came out and said he's a food allergist. And he started doing stuff like keeping records of how kids were responding when they were eating certain foods. And basically what he found out is whole foods are very good for you. And a lot of the processed things that they do to foods is not very good. So he talked New York City public schools into doing this very simple thing. They're going to remove about 3 or 4 different BHA, BHT, some food preserve, some other chemicals that happen with processed foods. And in a 4-year period, the state testing scores went up by 15.6%.
Wow.
Which, considering that's the largest school district in the nation, with I think 803 schools and probably close to 1 million students.
Oh wow,
that's a huge thing. That was unheard of.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that they talk about that was just incredible is they had 75,000 students who were 2 or more years behind grade level. They caught up to grade level.
Oh
which
wow.
That's amazing. That's the only word I have. So amazing. And so then I kept looking at that for quite a while. And then I said, let me check about discipline. So I looked up an alternative school up north. It's called Appleton, Wisconsin Alternative School and Central Alternative High School. And basically what they did is they pretty much did what New York did for discipline, what New York did with academics. And they found out that they had basically 5 years of no dropouts. Now, an alternative school, for those of you who don't know, is a school that takes the baddest of the bad little boys and girls, and they can't handle them in their school, so they ship them to an alternative school. I think there was about a dozen different high schools that were involved in this. And they soon found out that somebody wanted them to change their diet to do the same thing New York did. So they did that, and quite a bit of resistance at first, but they found out that kids, their anxiety levels, their stress levels were getting under better control. They were starting to listen. Fights, no weapons that were being brought to the school, almost no discipline referrals for a group of kids that were just really bad. So what it turns out to be is that when a child eats good quality food, most of these problems disappear. So I took that to one step level. And basically what Appleton did, they removed a lot of food dyes, which is the same thing New York did. They removed, let me see what they did. They basically got a very clean diet.
Got a clean diet, good nutrition, real nutrition, not
good. Yes, exactly. Good nutrition.
Franken meat.
And I want to ask you something. I'm wanting to ask this to all your listeners too, or viewers, I should say. Have you ever heard the term excitotoxins?
Excitotoxins?
Yes.
No.
Okay, I hadn't either. And something terrible happened. Let me tell you about the next thing first.
Sure.
The next thing was there was a prison in California. They needed more prisons built. And this guy, he agreed to build a prison, a 500-cell facility, if they would promise to feed their prisoners a vegan diet. I'm not pushing a vegan diet. I think you really better be pretty good nutritionally if you're going to do that, or you'd probably be missing out on some good stuff. But anyway, they said, oh, no, that's never going to work. They'll burn the prison down first. They said, we'll make it voluntary. Okay. So ended up more of them volunteered than they ever expected. So they had 2 groups of prisoners. One was on the clean vegan diet, and the other one was on the usual prison diet used throughout the state of California. The funny thing about it is the prison guards soon noticed that these guys were not causing any trouble. There was no gang affiliation fights, stuff like that. But the real kicker comes in is California statewide has a recidivism rate. That means return to prison within 5 years of 95%. Now, after they instituted this program, the return to prison rate dropped down to 2% for those in the program, which to me is unheard of. And when you think about it, okay, how many of those prisoners, if they had a good food supply, because I'm going to be blunt with you, the FDA has not done their job in making sure we have good quality food.
What you mean putting people that in the FDA that are also industry people that are self-regulating themselves? You mean that's a bad thing?
Oh yeah, yeah. That can pose some problems.
Yeah, it's kind of there's own self-interest going on over there. They keep appointing like billionaires and people that you're like, wait, don't you sit on the board of Roundup?
Yeah, exactly. A good old glyphosates and stuff like that. And I go through a lot of this information in my book. But let me take you back to something that happened in my own life when I was teaching gymnastics. There was this kid in the background, way back in the back of the gym. He had climbed up onto a cabinet that was built for holding chalk, which, if it's full, maybe 5 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
So no guarantee the cabinet's going to hold up. And anyway, the coaches were trying to tell him, oh, come on down, whatever. We're trying to get down. He wouldn't come down. And this kid was about 10 years old. Mom walks back there. Guy named Marcus. He says, you give me permission to try to touch your child. Okay, Marcus stacks a few mats up there, reaches up and grabs him, pulls him down, gives him to Mom. And Marcus just got back from 2 tours of duty in Iraq. So basically, he was a trained killer and also a true gentleman.
Yeah.
Gave him to the mom. Okay, the next week, the kid was back and had this horrible screaming fit. He was just screaming as loud as he could. He would stop when he had to take another breath. This went on for about 3 minutes.
Wow.
Okay, one of our female coaches put him on her shoulder like a baby, patting his back, and walks up there. And I stopped and I started talking to her about what I've been learning. Basically, I spent less than 5 minutes and wrote down some things she needs to look at and look up and just Google whatever. The next week, she stopped me at the door. She said, Robert, I want to thank you. He is like a different child.
Wow.
I can work with him with his homework now. He is so calm. And at that time, I had no idea what the problem was. And I said, has he been diagnosed with anything? And she said, yeah, he's on the spectrum. And if you're unlucky enough to know what that means, you know that means he's autistic. Autistic kids are very slight, and some are tremendously, have problems.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, then I had a pretty bad accident, and I didn't get to see him for about 10 months. And I got back there, and first thing I did, I asked her, I said, how's Tristan doing? And she said, amazing. So he is doing so much better. He has caught up to grade level. He caught up to grade level on all his subjects. She said he's a little bit behind on reading still, but within your grade level, I guess. And so she was very happy. Now, about 6 years later, I called her back just to see how he's doing. And, okay, I don't know that he can't be diagnosed with autism anymore, but he was picked by his peers to go on a field trip to Washington, D.C. Mom was very happy, put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, one other fellow that I knew because he was a realtor with in my house, I'd seen him at the health club that we worked out at. And one day he said, guys, I got to go on. He said, my daughter's at home and she's not doing real good. And my wife has to go grocery shopping. So he got out there early. I said, Ross, what's the matter with her? So she's having multiple seizures daily despite being on 4 seizure medications. I said, I don't know, but this doesn't help you or not. But Ross, let me tell you what I've been studying. And I pulled a couple pieces of napkin out of the bathroom wall, borrowed a pen, wrote, and I didn't see him for about 3 weeks. When he came back, I said, Ross, you ever look at that stuff I told you about? He said, man, I got addicted to reading about it. He said, I read for hours. He said, my daughter has not had a seizure since. And when I called Tristan 6 years later, I called Ross, and her daughter doesn't have seizures anymore. And I'm sitting there going, okay, the reason I started studying about this, and here's the tragic part, in my school district, not my school, but my school district, there was a 12-year-old boy, football practice. He fell over, landed on the ground. Coaches probably yelled, get up, let's go, get up. And they walked over, realized something was wrong with the guy. His heart was racing. They called 911. By the time this guy spilled, that poor guy was dead.
Oh, no. It's
And,
awful.
we were told at 12-year-old, that just doesn't happen. That's the one in a million.
Yeah, especially someone that young, right?
Yeah, I did something probably stupid on my part. I got on Google and figured out that there's a neurosurgeon by the name of Dr. Russell Blaylock. And he says that there are 460,000 Americans that die each year because of something he named as sudden death syndrome.
Wow.
We define that by the person never had a known cardiovascular or heart problem.
Not me, but I've known of other people.
No, not you.
You knock on wood, right?
Yeah, exactly. But, okay, so never had a heart problem. So why did he die of a heart attack? He's 12 years old. And so then, and then information. And every time I looked up something, it would always keep going back to Dr. Russell Blaylock. And he's considered one of the leading authorities on excitotoxins and excitotoxicity, which every time I asked somebody about it, they'd never heard of it either. So anyway, I go back to Tristan, who Mom said he caught at the grade level. I go back to the New York City Public School that said 75,000 people caught at the grade level. And then I look at what happened with the other guys. And then I come across a book by a man who said, his name of the book is Are You Starving Your Child's Brain? And this guy is truly a good expert on helping kids out with ADD and all that kind of stuff and behavior problems, and has done wonderful work. And fantastic doctor. But here's the deal, not a problem. When he was a child, he was a terrible kid. The teachers feared him coming into class. He was so bad. His junior year, he got kicked out of school for half his junior year, which I think required a court order. Okay, the next year, he went back to school, and the teacher said he's like a different child. During that time, he learned how to eat correctly. And he ended up graduating top of his class, despite being out of junior and high school for half a year. And he went on to become a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Basically, in my book, I named that chapter is a worthless child who becomes a doctor. And the fact is, he was a worthless child. It's just that his poor brain was not getting what it needed.
Yeah.
Have you got to look through my book at all, or?
I haven't gotten to, but let me jump in here. So I believe, if I understand correctly, and let me know if I'm following along the lines of your book, but we've had a number of doctors on the show, and we're not talking like some quack doctors who tell you they're a doctor on TikTok. These are pediatricians who work with children for 30 years. And one of the things we've discussed a lot on the show, because we've had so many people on, is the connection between your gut health and there's nerve endings there's connections to your brain from your gut. And a lot of people call your gut your second brain. And if you have crappy food, nutrition, quote unquote nutrition, I don't think of McDonald's or fast food as nutrition. That's just funky food. It's Frankenstein stuff that's basically meant to jump your dopamine and your serotonin and make you high for a second. But then you're still starving an hour later because that wasn't nutrition. And so we've had a number of people on. In fact, we've had 2 doctors on who have come to the same surmise you have, that the gut health and the biome in there and what you do can, if you put shit in your gut, you can, I guess technically you always have shit in your gut, but if you eat shit and put it in your gut, Taco Bell, whatever, it's going to cause brain swelling. And literally, if you swell your gut biome and your gut's like, oh man, we're trying to digest the most poisonous crap you just ate from KFC, your brain swells. And a couple of the pediatricians that we've had on, like I said, they've been around for 30 years and studied this. They actually use, like what you're talking about, nutrition, and they reduced many times autism stuff. Sometimes, depending upon where they are on the spectrum, no matter how major or minor, if they were fairly minor, they would actually correct the autism. It's not a perfect system, but it makes it manageable and livable. The people with autism can handle things and input more. They're not as it just makes a better person. And so I think maybe that substantiates some of the stuff you're talking about in your book. Is that correct?
Yeah, very much. And there's a lot of doctors that know a whole lot more about this than I do. I'm not going to know most. our first 4 chapters basically has results of what's happening. Now, after that, I get into what I call the dark side. Now, the dark side is you start reading Dr. Blaylock's book, Excitotoxin, The Taste That Kills. That's why I learned the term. And he's got a photograph in there, and it's in my book. I had to get on to my publisher 3 or 4 times. I want these pictures in the book. Okay, there are 4 pictures, and all in little squares. The top picture is a normal hypothalamus of a 10-day-old mouse. Okay, the second picture, top right, is 6 hours after receiving a dose of 3 grams per kilogram of glutamate. Now, glutamate is a normally occurring neurotransmitter, necessary thing, but it has to come in the right amounts, like the carburetor on the old gasoline engine. If your carburetor is working perfect, you're doing great. If same way with so 6 hours after receiving it, you see these brain cells that are starting to turn white and expand, like they're stretching out.
Oh, wow.
The next day, these brain cells have exploded. There's nothing left but free-floating cell organelles. Okay? 4 days later, the brain has cleaned itself out. Now, the dissection is what killed these mice, not the glutamate, but the damage was done. Now, this sad part about this picture is probably taken right around 1968 by a neuroscientist by the name of Dr. He's the one who said that this stuff, he named it excitotoxicity. And he said these brain cells are dying. Now, here's the problem with it. 3 grams per kilogram was used because many of our children eat that much glutamate.
Wow.
Okay, in their daily diets. So if this can happen that bad with 1 serving or 1 injection, because they want to get exact, but they said similar amounts are consumed by many of our children. And here's the other thing. At the time this picture was taken, autism was 1 in 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, according to Bobby Kennedy, autism for boys is like 1 in 36. And I've got a chart by the TACA, that's TACA, the Autism Community Awareness, and it's got a graph that shows it very, very well. And I also put in there another thing that people, there's vaxxers and anti-vaxxers and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to take one side or the other, but I do want to say that if Bobby Kennedy wants them to show their safety test on the vaccine, if they know there's nothing wrong with it, they would willingly do it, but they won't.
Yeah.
They won't, and they haven't.
They won't what? Clarify that for me. I'm not sure what.
Okay.
Who's they and they won't? What is the?
They won't show the safety test that they've done in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because they know it shows something bad.
Yeah, he's hiding it.
Really don't know.
Yeah.
But I also talk about, speaking of eating right, some of the best people in the country are, as far as eating, are the Amish. Oh. Now, the Amish farm like we did 200 years ago.
Yeah. That's probably the key.
I think they're crazy for not using plows and tractors and stuff like that. But everything else about what they eat is incredibly healthy. Their soil is better. They don't use a whole lot of processing or anything like that. And they're some of the healthiest people. Now, I watched the video one time of a doctor who worked in the Amish community for over 20 years. He said in all his 20 years, he'd never seen an Amish person with autism.
Really?
And then he went on to say, that amazed me too. And then he went on to say that, and I should say almost never, because you should never say that never. But he said you almost never see an Amish person with attention deficit disorder, with autism, with diabetes, or hardly with cancer, and almost never see an Amish person who gets vaccinated.
Now, let me clarify this, because I'm getting different stats on Google. I'm getting a door-to-door screening study of nearly 1,900 Amish people in Ohio and Indiana found that autism prevalence is about 1 in 271 children there.
Yeah, I just read that the other day. And
it does say it's lower than the U.S. population average.
Right.
And that some Amish communities often underreport or underdiagnose developmental conditions because they probably don't use modern doctors. But yeah, I just want to make sure we're good on
what you just said. Now, what I told you about this doctor, this was several years back. Now, I didn't hear that exact number 271 when I picked up my cell phone, got on the and asked about that, and that number came up to 271. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, okay, that's something I wasn't aware of when I wrote the book, but I did see that just the other day. So
now, given we said what 1 in 271 or 2, I think that's what we said. Yeah. According to the same website that states that, United States recent estimates indicate that 1 in 31 children age 8 years have been diagnosed with ASD, which is the spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder. So it is much lower. If normal children are 1 in 31 and autism is 1 in 272, obviously there's a thing. They still live with our pollution in the air and the solar. Definitely the world's getting hotter. It's crazy what's going on right now. Where I live, where I'm spending time right now, the humidity is insane. And we had 3 snows in a whole winter, which is so unreal for Utah. But yeah, it does definitely seem like it's lower. They're still out in our polluted environment. They're still driving our roads, and probably I think there's fallout from Roundup and a lot of the chemicals that were supposed to be banned in farms. And what that does is that it actually blows into other farms and the chemicals and stuff. And so they're probably picking up some of our pollution and shit.
You think you can have a perfectly healthy plant growth, but you got this farm a mile down and some of this stuff is blowing over. And suddenly you get.
Do you think that you know what a good study would be? Someone should do is try and find an isolated island that and see if somebody could do a study on that. But yeah, it shows that there definitely is a benefit. Maybe I should just go be Amish. There's a benefit to going being Amish. I'm not lifting up giant barns though. That's not my thing. I got a bad back.
I'm sitting there going, okay, they're not using tractors. They don't want to use cars and stuff like that. But they're still the healthiest people.
Yeah, and they're probably not eating McDonald's every day either.
Oh yeah. You hear about they're the FDA and the people who regulates the food, they won't let them sell some of their foods because they're not processed, so they're not homogenizing the milk. They'll drink raw milk and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there going, but they talk about how incredibly healthy they are compared to most of us. And I often wonder about that. But then back on the subject of excitotoxins, which like I said, I had never heard of. And so after I noticed a guy who died, a 12-year-old. Years later, I decided I'm going to use my Google, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, I'd take the name of a trip in Harris County. We got quite a few. Houston's the 4th largest city. And I would say the name of that school district, and I'd say, athletes dying. And every now and then, somebody got murdered in a parking lot late night on Saturday night or something like that. But a lot of them, about half of those, had similar stories to what. And why these kids died, I don't know. What? Now, my first question was it hot? No. Did he break his neck? It was football. I said, no, something with his heart. And that just didn't make sense to me. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sitting there reading Dr. Blaylock's book. And he was telling so many things that excitotoxins affect. Now, the 2 worst are monosodium glutamate. That's the one that I told you about the picture of the brain. It's aspartame. Now, if you drink Diet Cokes, you're pretty much sure you're getting a 0-calorie drink. But if you Google or use the new AI and you do, is aspartame connected to weight gain, it will say yes. Or if you go, are excitotoxins connected with diabetes? Definitely yes. Multiple sclerosis? Yes. Cancer? Yes. Heart disease? Yes. And you just go down the line, arthritis, anything with ITIS, suffix inflammation, it will have it. Tremendous amount of them. And so basically what I found out is that all the stuff I'd said in my book was almost always verified by the new AI. Now, that's when I also did what you said and found out that now they're claiming 271, 271. And I realized that just about 2 weeks ago after I had my book done. Okay, but the other thing that kind of bothers me, I did the same thing with what Bobby Kennedy said. I said, what is the CDC statistics on boys with autism? And the other day it said 1 in 20. I wished I hadn't found out. I didn't need to know that, or I didn't know about that. But it just seems like I've explained a lot of it in my book. If you take a Diet Coke and you look on it, there's a warning on there. It says, warning, phenylketonuria. This product contains phenylalanine. oh, whatever. But I Googled unrelenting, Pentagon, and warfare, and they experimented with that as a potential weapon for national level.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Okay, so they knew this years ago. A man named Dr. Adrian Gross was an FDA toxicologist who kept aspartame off the market for over a decade. And he said because his lab rats showed significant increase in brain tumors. I'm going, oh, okay. And humans, since 81, when aspartame came out, the glioblastoma cancers, which are very, very hard to treat, have greatly increased.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, I've got one chapter in this book. It's called FDA 92 Symptoms. Now, I named that chapter off a Google search. And consumers called in 92 different types of complaints. Some of them like headaches, some of them like skin rash, some are itchy areas, some of them feeling upset, nauseous, or whatever. And then there were some very serious ones, okay? So if you go into excitotoxins or connected to, you can also get autism, Alzheimer's, any neurological disorder you can come up with. It will almost always have it.
Wow.
And so another picture in my book, I believe on about 85 or something like that, has a picture of some neurons, a neural pathway. There's a neuron, you got one end and synapse at the other end. And it shows how it's covered by the myelin sheath, basically insulation around the neuron. And it has this little cell down there called oligodendrocytes. And the oligodendrocytes are feeding the myelin sheath with everything it needs, basically. Okay, so then you have a good insulation, right? And I saw the picture that I told you about that Dr. Olney took almost 60 years ago now. And I said, do oligodendrocytes also have glutamate receptors? And 10 years ago, I don't think it knew it. But now there's a lot of areas in the body that has glutamate receptors. And it said, yes, it does. And then I used the AI that I've recently figured out how to use. And I asked it, okay, how did I do it? I said, if oligodendrocytes contain glutamate receptors, does that mean the oligodendrocytes are compromised, providing the myelin sheath, causing multiple sclerosis? And it said definitely yes.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a big whoa. And the FDA knows this stuff. They've known it for years. Dr. Olney went before Congress, he went before food manufacturers, he went before the FDA and begged them to take this stuff off. He said, every neurological disorder known to man is going to greatly increase if this stuff is not removed.
Wow.
Tragically, he was right.
Yeah. So let's try and round out the proof of this. And what recommendations do you do for nutrition in your book? And what do you tell people on how to address these things and keep them from happening and protecting your children yourself?
I do spend a lot of time talking about that, and also have we also talk about obesity. And on obesity, it started increasing about the time that MSG got popular in our food supply.
Oh.
And that's just one of the things. And speaking of the nice, decent, clean diets of the Amish, the American public, the obesity has increased greatly, is anywhere from 39 to 42% obese for the American adult.
Oh, wow.
And the Amish obesity statistics are, and I'm going, okay, that's just another thing of saying how clean the food is. Now, I tell people, speaking of the photo of the brain cells being destroyed, Dr. Olney did this on 6 different animal species. Okay. And all of them had different varying degrees of damage to the brain cells. Okay, now he's obviously never done this on a human child. You don't want to take a kid and dissect their brain. Okay. But he said when they take the blood glutamate levels of all these 6 different types of species, none of them were nearly as high as that. In fact, human, especially children, 5 times higher than any animal species tested. And stayed there for longer. So that, to me, means there's a very good probability that this kind of stuff is causing the same kind of damage in our children.
Yeah.
And when they take away these excitotoxins, which most people don't even know the name of, and I didn't either, it will definitely make a difference for some people. Now, if you're talking about behavior, my kid's just fine. It doesn't bother him. He eats some of this stuff, whatever. Here's the deal. if a teacher is spending all their time or 20% of their time fighting with discipline problems, that means their kid who's not affected is getting much less time with good education. And so I also have several other pictures in here. One picture has a picture of measles vaccine. And this one, I'm sorry that I couldn't document where I got it from, because I took this picture years ago when I had no intention of writing a book or no thought of it. And it has a picture of a graph, and it's going up and down like this. I think this is summer and winter. This is in 1838 and continues on. And these are deaths per 100,000, not deaths, cases of measles per 100,000.
Oh, wow.
And then all of a sudden, about in the 20s, it started dropping way down. And by the 30s, it was really low. Now, I was born in 55. In 1950, the graph had already been hovering on the zero line. And 18 years later, when the measles MMR vaccine came out, it had been pretty much on the zero line for nearly 20 years. And about that time, the tachograph started in 1970. And about that time, the autism started creeping up. In 20 years, it went up from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 1,000, which is tenfold. And then all of a sudden, it starts rocking.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that the main things you got to do is you got to take away the MSG.
MSG, okay.
Food colorings, which all these guys did. The Dr. Lyons, that was a bad kid turned great. The New York.
And a lot of those food colorings and different additives, they're not legal in other countries.
No, they're not. And they're petroleum based. Who makes it in just petroleum? And Europe, like you said, Europe may have hot Cheetos, and they may not be quite as darkly dyed. And they may not have some of the bad things that our people have done. It was an FDA employee that told the FDA they need to stop doing all this stuff because it's bad. But they did it, and they continue to do it. And they've done this now for decades, and they refuse to admit it's hurt. If they're doing their job, they would do this. But back to the measles graph and the autism graph, they're right in there alone. Oh, and there was one doctor. There's one thing I've read a lot of, something called vaccines.news. And there's probably 1,000 different articles on it. And they're pretty much written by people you think would know what they're talking about, reputable people. And I tell about 4 stories. And one of them is a lady who took her triplets in to get vaccinated. And by the time she got them home, one of them was staring off into space. By the next morning, they were all staring off into space. And they all had. There was another one about this one doctor. He was a very good doctor. He always followed the CDC guidelines, which, by the way, is now getting, when I was a kid, we get about 5 vaccines. Now they get 60, 65 vaccines by the time they're in elementary. And so the doctor said, look, I had some parents come up to me, complain that after I gave them the vaccine, their kids started showing signs of autism. And he said, oh, no. He said, there's never been a study that proves what you said. And then he said that with all honesty. A few years later, his own son was vaccinated, and his own son got autism. So he started questioning it, okay? And now he has a completely different attitude on that. And this is a pediatrician. Now another one that went was, I had a little story about the Amish, thing. And then one more was a lady, and she was talking about SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Detective, and she just retired, and somebody gave her 250 names of children who died of SIDS. And they said, all I want to know, all I want you to find out for me is when they died, when they were born, when they were died, when their last vaccine was, and the circumstances. And he found out that % of those SID deaths died within 48 hours of some type of vaccine.
Really?
Now, if that's, since you said that, let me put it this way. Nowadays, we live in this world of misinformation, disinformation.
Yeah.
I hope I haven't put anything wrong that I not put in there. But
let's clarify a few things, because we need to lay some foundations on this. There's no scientific evidence that's extensive that's found a link between vaccines and autism. Some of the things you cited of the early, when they started tracking autism, one of the challenges with it is originally they were just looking for extreme autism. And now what we found is there's a spectrum. And so it's kind of one of those things. I had somebody the other day on Facebook say, we didn't have a lot of gay people 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's like, no, we did. They were hiding because people would kill them and beat them senseless. In Wyoming, they drug a poor guy behind a car and killed him. It was very dangerous. And so gay people were always here. They were just always hiding until recently. And the same was kind of the autism. The SIDS death being within 48 hours, I'd have to Google that, but I really think that sounds like some quackery.
That does sound pretty heavy duty.
It does. And there's so many of these people that are out there selling shit and they're doing stuff. Every one of these people, I always see they're selling stuff or they're selling influence or they're selling power, and they're just quackeries. I would say that it's more directed to what you're saying about nutrition, because in the 70s, you and I were eating pure sugar. When we drank a Coke, we were drinking pure sugar, and our bodies know what to do with pure sugar. Exactly. It is very natural for us. And so our bodies know how to process that stuff. When you put these sugars in that are these Frankenstein created sugars, our bodies are in shock, toxic shock. We have no idea what to do with those things. And so our bodies are just combobulated trying to fix those. And then you've got, like you said, I'll agree with you on the dyes and the trans fat that used to be in it. I think we've eliminated a lot of the trans fat, but even then there's probably still cases of it. People just eat shit now. I mean, and I'll give you my thing. I used to eat shit all the time. I used to drink 10 to 15 Mountain Dews a day. I'm single, so I would eat out at every fucking fast food joint. I was nearly 400 pounds. It's a wonder I was still alive when I think back when I was drinking half a bottle of vodka every other day. And I have a high tolerance, so I have to drink a lot of vodka just to, so I don't have an addiction problem where I couldn't stop, but usually every couple of days because I'd have to wait for my hangover after a while. But I ate shit. And I weighed 400 pounds and I felt like shit. And I finally reached a point where I said, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. So I went full quote unquote veganese, I'll call it, because there's 50 million versions of vegan. And if I cite the wrong one, I get yelled at. But I went full vegan and I cut out all the pop. I cut out all the fast food eating, and I just ate live leafy greens foods. And I started losing 2 to 3 pounds a day. And I lost 100 pounds in 3 months. And that just tells you the difference of the quality of food that you eat and the nutrition you eat, like you talk about in your book, versus the shit that's out there that we're consuming. And I still live in a pretty pure sense now. I go out and eat. I have a 1 meal a day, but I fast. I learned to fast. And I learned to, I shop at a local farm for both my eggs and my salads and whatever else they can give me there. It's all natural. It looks way better than the shit that's in the store. But if you avoid all that crap, and I would give you that some of this may have contributed to autism, or at least mothers' diets affecting the brain of the child. We know that if a mother takes drugs or heroin, that baby will be born addicted, right?
Yeah, well, there's so many variables.
Yeah. So I think when we blame vaccines, we've been using vaccines for 200 years. I think we just didn't identify autism as well. And even now, the spectrum is pretty broad. It's pretty wide now. And we've kind of learned that. And over time, like I say, someone said, there's not a lot of gay people who used to be around 50 years ago, but now they're everywhere. See what our society has become? And you're like, no, there was always that amount of gay people around. They were just hiding in the Catholic Church as priests. That used to be the safe place they could go where they wouldn't be killed. Probably right about some of that. Yeah. And the same thing with autism. It's just, as we've learned more about it, we've studied more about it, we've got more data. But no, I wholesale agree with you. And children are so important. We've had people on that have cited studies, I'm sure you're aware of them, that if children, they come to school without eating breakfast because their parents are poor or their parents are overwhelmed, they don't handle them. So schools started having to serve breakfast. And then a lot of schools, I look at the crap. Geez, do you remember the crap they used to feed us in school? When we were in school?
That works,
Yeah, it was like fries and greasy pizzas, and no wonder we had problems in school. And then a can of Coke, and they used to make this fry sauce. It was like mayonnaise and ketchup. Like, I just think of everything I eat. Yeah, and now in some schools, they have improved the diet, but it makes a difference between rambunctious kids and kids that can learn.
Let me tell you a little bit about the chemical breakdown. Then I go over quite a bit of aspartame.
Aspartame, yeah.
when it hits 86 point something degrees, it starts chemically breaking down. And the first chemical breakdown is methanol. Methanol, that's what all the Skid Row drunks went blind on, plus it's a poison. The second chemical breakdown is formaldehyde.
Oh, wow.
Which is great if you want to preserve a dead body. And the third one is formic acid, which is what the stuff the ants sting you with. And also industry uses for one of the products in epoxy paint thinners.
Oh, wow.
Now, as far as what you were saying about the autism, you're right. There are people who they walk in the door and right away you go, oh my God, there's something wrong with this kid. And then there's someone else who you know for 3 months and sometimes you wonder about them. And then their parent tells you they're thinking he might be autistic now. And so you're right about there just being a wide range of people who have that. But, and another excuse I think they use, I wrote that, I think this is an excuse. They say a lot of that is genetic. Maybe it is genetic, but I don't think I think genetics is one of the variables, but one of the many variables. But the thing is, if something's genetic, nobody can be held accountable.
Yeah, that's true.
Just like the photograph, the brain cell damage.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that caused it. So why didn't the FDA take this away?
Yeah.
They could have, but they were making big money, and Congress apparently would rather have them make big money than be helpful for our
Yeah. And sadly, it's the big.
And when you were young, I just turned, so that's about my age. But when I was young, I don't remember ever hearing the term Alzheimer's.
Yeah. The other factor is, though, that we're living longer than ever before. When they created Social Security in the 40s or 50s, whenever that was, the scam was, it was great for the U.S. government because when they created Social Security, like only 10% or so, I'm just throwing figures, so please don't quote me, folks. Google it yourself. But something like 10 or 15% of people made it to 65. So it was a great boondoggle for the government because they're like, oh, hey, at 65, we'll give you all your money back. And they're like, okay. Oh, I died at 50. Like 100 years ago, people were dying at what, like 40? That was the lifespan. So our problem now is we're living longer than ever before, and we're seeing the complications of that. So we're seeing but I would agree with you that, and I think there's data behind this, that what you eat, your health, your nutritional values, sleep factors, if you don't eat well, or if you eat shit, you're not going to sleep well. I used to live that way. I used to live with rot gut, and I would go through 4, 5, 6 fucking Rolaids a night in the middle of the night that I would have to keep taking because the shit in my gut was just rotting. I call it rot gut. That's anytime I see bad foods now, I just go rot gut. Yeah, I know the pain that's going to.
You were talking about that. I think it's the vagus nerve that actually connects the brain to the gut.
Yeah,
and they do call it the second brain.
Yeah,
and it's if you don't feed that second brain as well as the rest of your entire body and your original brain, then face it, inferior parts or ingredients don't make a superior anything.
Yeah.
So you learned through your own personal experience of going a heavy duty swing from way off what you should have been doing, and now you've swung the pendulum to the other side, and you've obviously gained a whole lot of health benefits.
Oh yeah, and so I totally agree with you. As we wrap the show, give people your final pitch out to pick up your book, order up your stuff. Is your book on Amazon? I was trying to find it.
It's going to be on Amazon pretty soon.
Oh,
okay. It's going to be on pretty soon.
When you get a link for that, will you send it in the show so we can add that to the link
in fact,
for you?
I'll tell my publisher to do that too, because
Please do.
He contacted you guys. But the main thing it does is it makes you sit back and question things. When that little boy died, I had a lot of questions. And when I found out, every time I would have a question, I would Google something or look up something and to answer that question. But I'd quite often get more questions and answers. So yeah, it's an ongoing process. So what I say is consider this book as a start of your education. And if all these schools are making this kind of 15% increase from the largest school district, this is basically, I wrote this like a blueprint for what schools and superintendents should do to really help out their own school.
I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you've done with me.
I love it. And I love the second brain stuff. It's diet. What does that old adage people say? The main thing of losing weight is what you eat. Yeah. And the main thing of the if you want to lose weight, it starts in the kitchen. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to allude to.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And I'm a living proof of it. One of the things someone taught me a while back ago was if you go to the store, you only stay on the outside of the store and move down aisles that are necessary.
That's the way to go.
And somebody explained to me, they go, you know why, Chris, the healthiest live food, because a lot of vegetables are still live. A lot of the healthiest live foods that haven't been destroyed by salt blasting, that are in the frozen thing, and I forget what they call it. It's like a bleaching process when they fast flash food, even like vegetables. They blanch it. I think it's called blanching, and they blanch it with massive amounts of sodium. So you're not even getting the right food when you eat frozen stuff. But it's because that stuff dies off the fastest, because it's what you're supposed to be eating, what you eat in the Word.
And another thing is, people say if you're eating a real food, it's not going to be something that's going to be on the shelf for months. It's going to spoil pretty quickly.
Yep.
And you get a hamburger helper package, and I used to eat this a lot, and it tastes great. And that package may be 6 months old.
Yeah.
But what are you putting in your body other than a lot of nothing?
Yeah.
Even if it's nothing negative, you're not putting anything positive into your body.
So people can sign up to order the book on your website, I believe. Is that how it works?
Yes. And I believe, and he told me quite a while ago, and it says Robert Maker Official. I think it's either .com or .org, but I checked that out myself. But
it is .com, by the way.
It is. And did I say that right? Robert Maker.
You did. Yep. Okay. RobertMakerOfficial.com.
Okay, good. And hopefully I can get some, because the most important thing about this is if you've got a child with a lot of problems, maybe all you need to do is learn what not to feed the kid.
Yeah.
And if that works for your kid, like it worked for Tristan, like it worked for Ross's daughter who was having seizures, you don't need to go spend a fortune at these doctors if you just try this first. Now, I'm not going to say it works every time. I'm going to say it's worth a try.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. We've had so much data on the show and talked to so many real doctors that toast us. So I agree with you. I'm glad you're changing the diet for kids in school, because that's where they have the hugest problems. Even the 70s, before what is that sugar that they have? It's high fructose corn syrup.
Fat-free and sugar-free was replaced by food without fat or sugar. Doesn't taste that good. So you add flavor enhancer like MSG. You add artificial sugars, 0 calories. So people think that's good. There's so many problems with that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Fat-free or sugar-free. Anytime I see sugar-free, 90% of the time it's going to have sucralose in it, which is like a hidden sugar. And that shit is 600 times more sweeter than normal sugar. And I will get sick. I used to drink those energy drinks before I'd work out. They're supposed to be pre-workout. And I'd be like, they don't have any sugar in them. Why do I want to throw up? And it was because the sucralose was just so sugary.
Now, I heard a story of a guy who was showing off and drank 2 Red Bulls, downed them, and it killed him. But I don't know if that's true.
That guy was an amateur.
No. Yeah, that was an amateur.
They are really bad. They'll make my kidney and liver hurt.
Those really?
So
well, but see, the thing is, there's a lot of things that I may be able to eat, never bother someone else to eat, and it'll really, some people die when they eat a peanut.
Yeah.
You know?
The sucralose, and your body just doesn't deal with these things. And so I've learned to get really healthy. I eat really healthy foods. Even the lettuce I buy from a local farm, it looks 10,000 times better than that dead head of faded green lettuce that you see at the store. Everything is richer, more tastier. In fact, my salads last longer in the fridge than if I bring home a head of lettuce from the store. And it's just, if you put it in your mouth, it's going to be in your body. And if it causes swelling in your bowels, because your bowels are like, what the fuck is this crap? It's going to swell your brain, and you're not going to function well. And when you get to be my age, you really start to notice these subtle changes.
Yeah. You know? If you pick up a package and you look at it and you read the ingredients list and you don't recognize what half that garbage is, probably should put it back.
Probably should put it back. Yeah. I totally agree with you there. All right, man. We'll wrap up the show here. We've got your .coms and the pitch out. Feel free to throw in any final thoughts you want, but thank you very much for coming on the show.
My only final thought is don't trust the FDA. Take your health into your own hands and utilize the good part. But a lot of doctors won't tell you this, because if the stuff I've got in my book, if I was a doctor, I'd have been thrown out of medicine.
Yeah. They seem to fix a lot of the symptoms, but they don't really fix the problem. You know, if I eat a bunch of shit and I get rock gut, I can take a pound of Rolaids. But if I just don't eat the shit, then I don't have to take the pound of Rolaids and Tylenol.
Yeah, I'm on absolutely no prescriptions of any kind.
Yeah,
and I just don't trust it.
One last story. Well, I'll squeeze in here as we round out the show. But when I was a kid, and this is the 70s before they started putting the high fructose corn syrup in sugars and stuff. But a lot of those cereals, even back then, the cereal stuff was just faux nutrition. It was just manufactured starch crap. And I remember I had this friend who had a real problem. He was one of those anxiety kids who was always bouncing off the wall, disruptive in school, disruptive in life. He was like one of the most annoying people you could know. And he was like 8 or 10 or something. And I used to always wonder what his fucking problem was, because when he would go off the chart, he was like my 1-year-old husky. He would go full crackhead zoomies, run around, jump over everything, cause problems. And he had a problem childhood, problem parents, but they would give him a bowl of one of those sugar cereals like Count Dracula or something back in the day. And he would fill that bowl to the peep with it. Then he would put a layer, I'm not even shitting you, 1/2-inch thick layer across the top of pure sugar on top of the cereal. And he would eat that, and I would watch him launch into space energy wise. And I was like 10 at the time, and I literally correlated at that point sugar and eating that shit cereal. And thank God my parents are poor, so my mom would not buy cereal because it was expensive. And she's like, "You're gonna have to eat eggs." And thank God, because
speaking of eggs, we were told for so long that eggs were so bad for us.
Oh yeah.
Now they're saying, "Oh, eggs are wonderful food," and don't separate the yolks and the whites. You need them both.
Yeah, you do. Their eggs are some of the best things for you as a gym person, workout person. And I do recommend, though, you get your eggs from a farm. I buy my eggs from a real farm.
I wish I had a farm in my
You could taste the difference. Sometimes look around your area. I'm not sure what area you're in, but a lot of areas have hidden farms. I had one 4 blocks away from me. I had no idea until somebody turned me on to it. And it's a hidden farm that's in the middle of suburbia. And it's been around for 100+ years, and they do hydroponic stuff. So they do year-round. They can do year-round vegetable growing, because up here in Utah, 9 months out of the year, it's too cold to grow it. Shit. Up until this last year. Now we're living in Las Vegas. Anyway, so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Robert. And I'm glad you're out there changing the world, because what you put in your gut affects your brain, affects brain swelling, your focus, and you feel it at our age, man. I mean, if I eat some rock gut, I'm gonna be. I think the other night I had something I shouldn't have had too late, and man, I woke up and I was just burping, and it was rock gutting in my stomach, and I'm like, why did I know better? Why?
But you're lucky enough to catch it, and other people don't, and they can be damaged in ways that they never realized.
Yeah. Plus, I've tuned into it, but I probably eat so much shit. The other thing that we had is, I don't know who took it off the market, but they'd remove forever chemicals out of our food supply. I don't know if it was Biden or someone before Biden, but Trump administration just authorized to have Roundup put back into the system and forever chemicals. And so, yeah. So now we're going to have forever chemicals back in our food. And I believe that would contribute to some autism spectrum issues. I don't know that for a fact, folks, but it doesn't take a lot to correlate that. Roundup has been given to do cancer and is still incorporated over that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that you having me.
Thank you. And thanks to Ernest for tuning in. Order up his books wherever fine books are sold. You can go to robertmakerofficial.com, or we'll have his updated link to Amazon on the website when he's fully published. But you can order it there and stay in touch with him for future stuff. Thanks to Ernest for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.